Vang me manasi pratishtita, mano me vachi pratishthitam, aviraviramaye Vedasyama anistha Shrutam me ma prahasi Anena dhitena horatram Samdadhan Arutam vadashyam Satyam vadashyam Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu mam Avatu Vaktaram Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, we have 4 levels of speech. It's well known in Tantric tradition and Kashmiri Shaivism. I'm sure most probably something similar you will have in your tradition, though your Tantric tradition is Vaishnavic, and it would be interesting to see how most probably you will have similar ideas. So the 4 levels of speech are well known already from the Rig Veda. There is this Dirghatama Uchatya Rishi, very, how to say, archaic, and his hymns are mainly quoted all over, but it is like a puzzle of some kind. So he speaks in one of his puzzle hymns of 164, which is quoted all over. Chatvari vak parimita padani, tani viduh brahmana ye manishina, guhatrini nihita nengayanti, turiyam vacho manushya vadanti. So the word has been measured in 4 quarters. Those quarters are known to the knowers of the word brahmanas. So literally brahmanas are those who know the word. Because Brahman is the word in the Rig Veda. Yes? Brahmachari and Brahmacharya is the one who follows the hymn, the Veda, the word. And Brahmanaspati is the one, the Lord of the word. And later Brahman becomes already a spirit, and after that we look at Brahmanas as someone who is of that spiritual quality. But truly speaking, the first meaning is the carrier of the word. And in Purusha Sukta, Brahmanas are those who express through the mouth of Purusha the word. So it's kind of interesting that Brahmana is the word carrier, the teacher, the one who speaks the word.
And is there any correlation between the word and Sanskrit?
Sanskritam, the word Sanskritam appears much later, like 1000 AD, or maybe a little earlier, but it's already in our time. It's not a known word, Sanskritam, in this period of Rig Veda or Brahmanas or Upanishads. There is another word used, Arsha Bhasha. Arsha Bhasha, the language of the rishis. Or Deva Bhasha is used also a little earlier than Sanskritam, which means, the language of the gods, as you know. But or Chandas. Panini speaks always of Chandas as a poetic speech. And it is interesting that there is no belonging to any nation. See, Arsha Bhasha, Deva Bhasha, Chandas, and Sanskritam has no connotation of belonging to some nation. It's not Indian, it's not Maharashtrian or Hindustani. All languages carry that national flavor or that sign of belonging to a certain nation and land. Sanskrit doesn't have this at all. It belongs to another time or another dimension, rather. So the carriers of the word, why the carriers of the word know these four? Because they actually know those deeper levels of consciousness. They are not only carriers of the word, they are also the expressors, those who can express the deeper levels of consciousness through the word. According to Gebser, the word is expressed through the heart. And it is when the opening of the heart is taking place that the myth, first expression of myth, takes place. And he gives a very beautiful exposition. He shows that the word appears in the pictures. You can see that when they draw pictures, then the mouth appears finally. In the magic structure, there is no mouth. There are eyes, there is head, and there is nose, but no mouth. Absent. And he takes very ancient pictograms from the ancient times, from the magic structure, and he shows that mouth appears when there is a myth, there is a word. So it belongs to the mythical structure of consciousness, so to say, following the magic. The magic structure is older. It is operating by taboos, by those kind of shamanistic culture of invoking spirits, by feelings, by interaction with nature. Whereas the word does something else. It brings another dimension of ourselves, something which does not belong to nature as such. It belongs to some other level of consciousness, which comes from elsewhere, from another origin, so to say. So the word creates the myth that we came from elsewhere here, and we belong there, and we have to return there. So the word creates this mythical structure where we have to go back to our origin. So we are here by some chance, or because we came here for some reason, but we have to go back where we came from. We are not from this place. That's what word does. Magic structure doesn't do that. Magic structure holds us as natural beings. We are part of this nature. We are one with nature. And we operate within nature by the means of nature, to get certain things done. So there is no separation on me and nature in the magic structure. I am part of nature.
Understood. So the dialogue continues then between soul and nature as two separate processes within the Rig Veda.
Right.
Which is what we chatted about in our last group class.
Right. Exactly. So that separation, and also what is important, that the origin, which is not in the nature but beyond nature, is expressed by the word. So they are the knowers of those four levels of consciousness. They carry it. They bring it here. In nature, you won't find them. They are beyond nature.
But the word can be used to connect to nature. So in the magical side, understanding its intent was to resonate more fully and totally with nature, rather than transcend nature, right? But we can use word through our rituals, through our pujas, to bring us closer to the object, which is nature.
Right. We as a spirit, we want to come closer to nature, right?
Correct.
Right. Of course. The word is used very differently nowadays. The word is not used in a vertical sense. It is used in a horizontal sense, rather. It is connecting things. People are talking non-stop, everything, whatever comes into their mind, whatever passes through, and without questioning what it is. But if you start aligning yourself vertically, and not horizontally, then there will be all that depth of consciousness will be expressed in nature. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they possess the power of the mind, Manishinach, that is the power behind. And in the hidden place, the three are established, which we will be talking today about, and which do not move. They are, so to say, steady levels. And the fourth, that man speaks. Here. So they, like Harivak, which is expressing what we hear as word, is that the fourth one we speak. But there is before that, there are some other levels. So here they are in the Tantra, Paravak, Pashyanti Vak, Madhyama Vak, and Vaikhari Vak. It's a well-known division. Sri Aurobindo speaks, it's a very nice quotation from Sri Aurobindo. On the levels of speech, he says, let us presuppose a conscious use of vibration of sound, which will produce corresponding forms or changes of form. If you can imagine such a thing, that the sound is changing any form because it vibrates, it connects, it restructures the structure, yeah? Because by this vibration it gives certain patterns which will structure the form, and the form will appear with this sounding. So let us realize then that a vibration of sound on the material plane presupposes a corresponding vibration on the vital, without which it could not come into play. So it's clear that it could not have come into play if there would be no vibration on the vital force. So vital force is the vibration of the sound, which creates the physical vibration and pattern. Otherwise, where would it come from? Not from the physical itself, but from some depth of physical, which is we call vital. That again presupposes corresponding originative vibration on the mental. There has to be an idea of this vibration or the intention of this vibration, something which allows it to be manifested on the vital and then on the physical. Something which is structuring it as an idea, or as an intention, or as a direction which has to be followed, and so on. That again presupposes, and the mental presupposes a corresponding originative vibration on the supramental, and the very root of things, where all things are manifested and created. But a mental vibration implies thought and perception, and a supramental vibration implies a supreme vision and discernment. And that is the difference between mental and supramental. In the mental, we have only thought and perception, whereas on the supramental level, we have this supreme vision where we see how all things relate, and we can discern every part of this oneness as meaningful and separate. All vibrations of sound on that higher plane is then instinct with and expressive of this supreme discernment of a truth in things, and is at the same time creative, instinct with the supreme power which casts into forms the truth discerned, and eventually, descending from plane to plane, reproduces it in the physical form or object created in matter by etherical sound, by etheric sound. Thus we see that the theory of creation by the word, which is the absolute expression of the truth in terms of objects, and the theory of material, or in terms of meaning, in terms of expression, and the theory of material creation by sound vibration in the ether correspond and are two logical poles of the same idea. They both belong to the same ancient Vedic system. It's a very important statement. It's very difficult to underestimate the statement which Sri Aurobindo made here, that there are two different views which we hardly can correspond. One is that these objects, all these forms, universe, appeared from somewhere, and we are within it with our word, so to say, trying to figure out what it is. So how that word, which is within us, psychologically active, corresponds to all these things around us, already created. Do they have something in common or not? And so according to the Vedic vision, they are the result of the action of the same force.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it speaks to the notion of we are all connected. All forms are connected, regardless of whether or not we can appreciate the word that has created each form, versus the form that is created by the sound vibration itself. Is that what I'm grasping? I'm what I'm sensing is that Sri Aurobindo is saying the totality of the word is manifested in two different ways, and everything in between, the whole totality of how creation occurs, is part of the same source.
Right, correct. And if you look at this, all vibrations of sound on that higher plane, that on supramental, is then instinct with and expressive of the supreme discernment of truth, that knowledge, that consciousness which will be expressed in terms of the word in our speech, what we are talking now. It is coming from that highest discernment of truth. Of course, it went through many levels, and it came down, and it was expressed in the physical form, and it lost a lot of its power, so to say, but it is coming from that source. And from another side, simultaneously with that, in discernment of a truth in things, is at the same time creative instinct with the supreme power, not only knowledge, but power, which casts into forms the truth discerned, and eventually, descending from plane to plane, reproduces it in the physical form of object created in matter by etherical sound. So what he says, that the same power of consciousness, which we perceive as a light of knowledge on the highest level, which comes to us as the word, the same light of knowledge, instinct, and one with power, creates all the forms which we perceive in this universe. So we will be recognizing these forms because it is the same power. Power instinct with that very consciousness which we now apply as something we think we are discovering things anew. But truly speaking, we are rediscovering things. We already know them, and we are only matching that knowledge of that light of higher consciousness with the forms which it created in the first place.
Correct. So it's okay. So there's so many ways of interpreting this, and or viewing this. So I just want to make sure. So one.
It's difficult to express it in terms of, to be very, very precise, and to be that the vision will remain, because it is, you have to start from the beginning, where The light of knowledge and power are one, and then they kind of go into two different directions. One creates the object of sense, power creates the object of sense, and the light of knowledge creates the sense. So the sense and the object of sense, the word and the form, nama and rupa. There's something formed by power, by the same consciousness, and perceived by the light of knowledge, understood and connected in this understanding to the oneness of everything. That's what is going on, basically. Simultaneous process of one power creating within us the word perception, and which is matching with the world, because it is actually a complete match. And that is kind of difficult to believe that there is a complete match, because there's so much ignorance in the world. So we are under impression that we are not really in complete match with the object of sense. We think that we are in a total mismatch, and we are always trying to match it because of ignorance, because of gap which is created between the two. Yeah? And that gap is creative because it gives us a new perception, so to say, of things. We are kind of refreshing things, and we are holding them in their, how to say, detailed manifestation. We are not rushing to the oneness too soon. We are holding the manyness, the multitude of things, which is more important for the manifestation than to return to oneness too soon.
It's so wonderful how this theme keeps reoccurring and reoccurring about the space and the new perspective that space gives offers us if we're receptive to it. It seems like this is a paradigm that we're all being challenged to embrace more fully. But and it's coming. It's coming. I feel. So let me back up a second. Why does Sri Aurobindo feel that this is necessary to make this distinction, or is this the Upanishads that he's quoting?
No, he is speaking on speech, and here in the Upanishads, just mentioning, because it's from Kena Upanishad, Speech of Our Speech, which is a very, very powerful article. What is for him important is that the power which created the object of sense is determined by the light of consciousness, which we now embody in our sense and perception of these things. And there is a corresponding, so to say, reality between the two. So every object is inherent with the same consciousness because it is created by that consciousness. So you remember we discussed this, how these objects know how to be. This is really a profound kind of thing, that everything knows how to be. To be itself. This computer knows how to hold on to itself, to be itself, to work properly, to send a signal and precisely as it should be, and so it can function as it should be. And this bed knows how to hold my body here, and these cushions know how to be soft, and everything knows how to be in this constant movement of things, because we are whirling on the earth and around the sun, and everything is speeding up somewhere everything moves, and at the same time everything knows how to be in oneness. Birds know how to fly in the air, fish knows how to reproduce in the water, everyone knows what to do. It's incredible. And nobody taught nothing, nobody. Somehow everybody knows already by default. So where is this knowledge coming from? It is inherent within the object of sense. It is in the form. So, and what is happening to our consciousness when the multitude was created? That we perceive it as if we are discovering it anew, so to say, but it is already there.
I see. I see. Okay. Okay. But what does Sri Aurobindo mean by two logical poles of the same idea, though? Can you repeat that concept to me,
Yes,
Vladimir?
one is that the word is not creating object of sense. It is just giving us a psychological knowledge. So it comes to us, and we feel, so to say, certain knowledge, certain ideas, certain expression of ourselves, and by that we discover the world.
Mm.
And by that we, of course, change the world, because everything comes through the word. All our civilization, all these buildings, computers, everything is built by the word. There was no other way to build it. If the word would not be there, we would not be able to manifest the concepts, and the concepts would not be communicated, and without communication and working together, it would not be possible to create this civilization. This is one way of looking at it. So we are coming with consciousness into this already formed and made world, with the mountains and everything, galaxies, moon and sun and everything. The planets are there, and we are growing here. We are very young. These planets are old, and we come here and we start bringing consciousness in, which is very different from these old mountains and rivers and trees. And he says that these rivers and mountains and trees are not as old as our consciousness also, so to say. They are from the same origin, both of them. And these are the two logical poles.
I see. Got it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Nature is not different from consciousness. That's the
Yeah.
Vedic vision.
And I think that is where what I was referring to when we had our class and we were talking about the natural approach versus the soul approach. When I mentioned I don't perceive a conflict in nature or soul because it emanates from exactly that, the same source. So I think that's that is as I feel into that was my my quandary, my confusion around nature versus soul approach. Understanding one is about transformation, one is about the soul, but I think I wasn't looking at it from the perspective of what does one path lead to over the other, the asuras versus the new soul path from the Vedic system, as much as what was ultimately its source of origin that brought about the path, or the consciousness that led to the path.
You are looking like Shiva now, Rudra. He doesn't make a distinction between gods and asuras, because he kind of sees the beginning. He sees this original, so to say, consciousness manifesting all forms. But there were two stages, of course. And the first stage belongs to those who came first, and they failed to do it. And there was a second stage where there were other powers made to move in order to repair the fall of the first ones. So in a way, there is something. It's a symbolic way of talking, of course, but within these stages, we can see the difference. Because the first stage, we are representing the first stage as our embodied state, body, mind, and vital.
I see that when you make a distinction, a time distinction,
Mm,
I see the differences and I can appreciate them, I think, more fully. Um, I think where we are, or where I am now, and it's so interesting that you should say this is Shiva's perspective.
mm,
I get it. You know, it's interesting, Vladimir, because since this situation where you know, I felt Lord Shiva grace my physical form and spiritual form. It's interesting how to observe my own
mm,
beliefs or appreciation of the world in relation to that uh, moment of grace, right?
mm,
It's very interesting to observe how my persuasion, my belief system may be formed by the mere. Yeah, I remember, you know, one of my teachers saying many years ago. He said, "It is very important, and it does make a difference
mm,
what who you pray to
mm,
and how you do your puja." It goes back to a question I had for you a while back, where I asked you, does it matter what deities you're calling into your own awareness? And you said absolutely. You know, it 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 informs. I'm paraphrasing, but informs. You know, the type of puja that you do, as well as, you know, uh, if you are successful in summoning that deity through Agni and through all these other processes, um, how that impacts one.
mm, mm,
And so it's very interesting that
mm,
you know, this is it's so amazing that, you know, the dialogue that we're having comes from so many angles now.
mm,
You know, it's very fluid.
mm, mm. Yes, because this vision is fundamental. It includes all the movement, the creation of the object of sense and the sense. So both of them are, so to say, needed for the manifestation. And they are representing basically the movement of one conscious force. And
Mm,
in this sense, of course, even two stages which are there, they kind of represent more. The first stage will be more of that consciousness inherent in nature, that magic structure, whereas the second stage is more mythical, where it brings the play of the myth of the gods into picture. And then these two become kind of two poles or two views within ourselves. So we look at ourselves as spiritual beings and as the something which has to embody the spirit. We
mm,
see both in ourselves. We have to maintain that embodiment and develop it and take care of our bodies, you know, physically and otherwise. And we have to take ourselves to take care of ourselves spiritually. So both
mm,
things are there, and they are in a way, contradictory because one came to help another, to change the other and to bring it back to its self-awareness. There's someone in us who is aware, and there is someone in us who is not. So, and that creates the contradiction. Um,
that's where, thank you for that. That's where um, I completely agree in that
mm,
state of consciousness, why there would be a contradiction.
mm,
But once that contradiction is transcended, then we can appreciate what
mm,
Govendo says, which is it's all one, right? So you can still see the play between, and I love the way, I've never thought about it this way, the magical versus the mythical. I love that distinction that you make between both. But then it becomes a play between the magical and mythical. As the mythical gains in self-awareness, it can it knows how to play in the magical realm in order to transform it to its own wishes. So it's self-awareness, is pure consciousness now knowing how to deal with sense and form in order to manifest its own intention more fully. Not that it didn't before, but there are degrees of self-awareness.
Very nice, very nice. Good thought. The thoughts are recognized by something very interesting, and not even by thinking about them. It's something else. It's it has to be also somewhere perfect in form. So that form itself of that thought creates the possibility to see it. Otherwise, if the form is not perfect, if understanding is there, but form is not allowing it to be expressed or to be seen, then we can't really succeed in this. But when the form...
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I'm sure you've had experiences where you tap into aspects tap into aspects of supreme vision and discernment, but to ground that into through all of the koshas, through form, and manifest form out of that is a very different, through thought, is a very different exercise, and to varying degrees of success in that form. There's so many times where I perceive the truth, whether it be static or dynamic truth in something, although I know that at that level of supramental, we're talking about static truth, right? It's only when it comes down to form that it can, it becomes more dynamic truth. But even so, there is, as truth descends and power descends with it, the efficacy of the transmission varies depending on how prepared the form is, how accurately it reflects the essence of the supreme vision and the discernment. And that's what I'm starting to just observe more, not even to, I don't have any, I'm not yet an adept in terms of trying to necessarily communicate it, let alone create the form yet. But that's the connection, that's the bridge I'm trying to play with in my life right now, which is how do I myself vibrate this discernment that I can appreciate internally, right? And then how can I impact other forms, either around me or forms that I'm creating from this internal process, more effectively, so that it vibrates and resonates what the supreme consciousness is intending. It's an interesting, it's an interesting dynamic that's going on in my life right now. But I am aware that as I go through my daily routines and I interact with people, I'm aware that that's the impact that I want to have more and more of. But
we are all going through very interesting times. Something is changing. so rapidly that we are not even, how to say, we are not capable or able to comprehend fully. So we are kind of always behind somehow. The changes take place faster than we comprehend them. So the world is speeding up, and we are kind of trying to catch up with it.
Yeah.
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 All right. So this was the two poles of one system: the creation of the world and the creation of the consciousness perceiving that world, of the sense and the object of sense. And so, according to this Shaivik tradition, we have Paravak, and Abhinavagupta, who is an adept of this knowledge, describes Paravak as the transcendental word beyond creation, the very essence of the supreme reality ever present and pervading all. It is thus identical with pure consciousness, Chit, which is the ultimate reality. It is conceived of as a luminous vibration, Spurata, luminous vibration of pure consciousness itself, carrying within itself the whole cosmic manifestation, which is shining within it without any differentiation. So this is Chit, according to Abhinavagupta, Paravak, within which the whole world is there in luminous vibration with no differentiation yet. So Paravak is indeed present everywhere. It's a quotation in terms of Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. For without her, without Paravak, darkness and unconsciousness would prevail in them. And this is also very interesting. So every form of expression of intention here, or consciousness, power within this world, from the higher mental to the most physical, requires Paravak to support them. Because if Paravak would not be pervading them, the darkness and unconsciousness would prevail eventually. This is something to think of. I think it's a very nice idea.
So this reminds me of the second phase of creation, where the divine or the supreme conscious inserts a drop of himself in the inconscient in order to give that hope of light. Would you say that's similar to on a vibrational level, on a word level? This is really the same relationship that is established, no?
Yes, exactly. The highest descends into the lowest, and because of that, it pervades all the levels, and it is present on all the levels, on the lowest, even below the lowest. It is there, the supreme truth. That was the secret of the Veda, that Sri Aurobindo writes his books, The Secret of the Veda, about one thing, that below the darkness, below the densest inconscient, there is the supreme light. So, and he discovered it himself by experience. He was saying that he came to the bottom of things where there was no consciousness. There was only infinite rock, very hard, very dense, which you cannot penetrate, cannot break. So he was digging and digging and digging into that rock until he came to the spring of light. Suddenly, from the depth of darkness, the hidden light came out. And this is the secret of the Veda. That's all about that very secret that below, within our densest unconscious matter, there is the supreme truth supporting it. Otherwise, it would not be able to sustain. The darkness would prevail and there would be no movement towards light.
Yeah, and I so another lesson that I learned though, and you've repeated, you've shared this concept as well, is that and I love it. I really love when you said the soul always wants movement and the ego is what wants stability and static and the same and status quo. Um, and I so appreciate that because uh, I oftentimes have to remind myself that the dynamic between heaven and earth within Antariksham is um, will always be part of the dynamic that exists, right? And that is where transformation occurs. Is in uh, the process of digging into hard, deep, dense rock to find light again. That it's not a one-time affair, it's a continuous affair of finding light and finding light. But I can imagine what Sri Aurobindo went through, uh, digging and digging and not knowing where it would lead him.
Right. And you have to have already a total fulfillment from above in order to go into that densest darkness of inconscience. Nobody wants to go there, and it is very dangerous if we are not totally, absolutely backed up with the light from above. So you have to have total, full realization of that supramental light to descend into that darkness. Otherwise, even this, not so deep deeps would swallow us and gobble us, and we will be lost. And it
Yes.
will be very difficult for us to find way out.
Yes.
And somewhere he says, even in Savitri, that there are levels of inconscient where the darkness is so dense that the soul becomes kind of lost. It becomes lost and it is crossed. He uses specific word. It becomes not crossed out or something. He says from the list of the existing ones. So it won't be even mentioned as existent one. It will lose its own identity. Even the soul, even the eternal soul, cannot sustain itself there. It's so deep and dense, the darkness. So for the soul to go there and to do the work of digging, so to say, to find the deeper truth behind the darkness, his soul has to be totally supported by the supramental, transcendental power. Otherwise, it will be lost as individual.
Yes, that's yeah, I was taught long ago that the as as powerful and infinite as light is, so is dark.
Exactly.
So so if in the tantric um, Sri Vidya tradition that I'm a part of, there are two ways of of purifying oneself. One is to remove aspects that uh, that prevent you from experiencing lightness, and the other is to infuse yourself with more lightness to dispel some of the the darkness and the density.
Mm.
Uh, and one of my teachers in the past said, listen, we always have both aspects and practices that we can engage. But because I was doing a lot of work with shamanism
Mm.
before, and uh, and and in shamanism, I was doing at one stage, I was uh, working with sacred medicines,
Mm.
right? And so he perceived the kind of the Rudra energy
Mm.
that I was playing with in order to find answers and have different experiences. And he's just kind of forewarned me, this one teacher, and said, this is my tantric teacher, and said, listen, just know that as deep as you intend to go, there will always be more,
Mm.
always be more. And that gave me an appreciation of how infinite
Mm.
this work is,
Mm.
and also afforded me the opportunity to see that I have a choice in terms of what path um, I I I follow in order to reach uh, different levels of awareness and power. So it was interesting because I sense that is part of this as well within the
Mm.
Rig Veda.
Mm. Definitely. Very nice. Thank you for sharing this. There is always more and more. Always more. Um, so everything, stones, trees, birds, human beings, gods, demons, and so on, is but the venerable word, supreme word present in and consisting of everything in the form of that is identical with the Supreme Lord. So the word here is the Divine Mother, the Creatrix, the power which manifests everything from the Lord. So Parava consists of Prakasha and Vimarsha, these two poles of the same force. Pratyavamarsha, Pratyavamarsha. So Prakasha is a pure light of consciousness, and Vimarsha is a pure power. So of the word which carries within itself the whole world in its potential state. So it is this Chittapa, so Chit Shakti, so the Vedantic tradition. So Prakasha is the light of consciousness, and Vimarsha is this manifestation of power which spells out all the details of that light, all the bits and pieces, brings into the clear form formation. So, and then from there down we have Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. I am mentioning here semiotics, which was interesting for me one time, because when I studied semantics and semiotics, in semiotic studies, also the meaning is being studied. The levels of meaning has three main branches: semantics, syntactics, and pragmatics. And it's kind of interesting that it reflects the same structure. There are also three major functions of language: creative, cognitive, and communicative. And so the three levels of semiotics resemble the three levels of Vak in Tantra. Pragmatics is dealing with communication and is basically expressed by Vaikhari, the power of action. Kriya, um, reaching to a wider context. So the power of action, Kriya, is the characteristic of the expression of Vaikhari on the physical plane. Syntactics is dealing with the text as such and is expressed by Madhyama Vak as a structural relations of linguistic categories, morphology and syntax. It's kind of within the text reflecting the cognitive aspect of knowledge in terms of knowledge, jnana. So jnana is the relation of the categories. And once we know how categories relate, we get some understanding. It's very strange, yeah? That through that we get understanding. And semantics is something very difficult to explain, that very meaning or the intention of speech is expressed by pashyanti as the power of will or intention, ichha shakti, reflecting the creative aspect of language. So here we will be just looking again into it, see how pashyanti is reflected in jnana, and it means in the madhyama vak and madhyama vak in vaikhari finally. It's a profound knowledge of Tantra, by the way, one of the best we have today about speech and linguistics in general. But unfortunately, general linguistics and theoretically is not looking into this direction. They are stuck to the categories of morphology and syntax. They took only madhyama structural relations in linguistic categories, rejected the meaning, the semantic. There is no meaning in what they study, and there is no sound. They also rejected throughout the phonetics. Phonetics is not part of linguistics. So we have only what we call linguistics. It is only syntax, morphology, and syntax nowadays. And my major was in general linguistics, as you know. Yes, my major is from this. I have this background in general linguistics. So I was going around and trying to find out how things work and how they do, and with professors and so on. And all professors, all of general linguistics professors speak about communicative aspect of language as a major one. And I was wondering, and what about creative and cognitive? They don't have even place there. Nobody speaks about them, only about communication. But that is not correct. So we will continue next time. And this would be a good place to start, because I just laid out kind of an idea of these three which are there, but we will dive into them and see how they work.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. And yes, this is great because we have studied this from a tantric perspective, but I would love, this is going to complement so much my appreciation and allow me to go deeper into each and every one of these levels of speeches. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Vladimir.
Yeah, very nice. All right, I will end with a short mantra.
Okay.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukkha bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, friend. All the best. Namaste.
Namaste. Speak to you tomorrow.
See you. Bye.